Once I heard a wise man say that understanding women isn't necessary, you should simply love them. However, it becomes challenging to embrace that sentiment when it seems that financial priorities have taken precedence in their lives. Statistics suggest that infidelity is more prevalent among women than men, and when caught, they often downplay it, placing blame on their husbands. They argue that both partners share responsibility for relationship issues, including infidelity. My encounter with my future wife, Amber, was serendipitous. While visiting a college friend to collaborate on a project, I met Amber, a young woman who lived next door. She had dropped by to seek cooking lessons from my friend's mother. After completing our project, we all shared a delightful dinner. At the time, I was 20 and she was 21. Our relationship blossomed, and after a year of dating, we married and moved into my grandmother's apartment, a gift from my parents after her passing. Initially, post-wedding life was challenging as we both sought stable employment and navigated financial constraints. Eventually, I secured a well-paying job matching my skills, and Amber flourished in her career. Once we felt more financially secure, thoughts turned to starting a family. Amber dreamt of having a son and a daughter, but harbored concerns about potential health issues. We diligently prepared for pregnancy, attending courses and consulting with doctors. Yet, just when we thought we were ready, Amber unexpectedly reconsidered, citing our youth and the need to focus on other goals, such as improving our living conditions and moving to a larger apartment. I opted for a three-bedroom, agreeing with the logic of having enough space for everyone. What surprised me was her sudden change of mind. Following that, a series of odd occurrences raised my suspicions. I observed my wife investing a significant amount of time on social media, particularly on her work laptop, which she secured with a password, along with her phone, devices I never touched. Some miscommunications arose and secrets emerged. Although it didn't impact our daily life, it significantly affected our intimacy. She frequently arrived home late, exhausted, sometimes not going to bed at all, engrossed in her tasks. I wasn't fond of it. Deciding to address the issue openly, I anticipated a conversation but faced a scandal instead, accused of not respecting her dedication to work. I remained perplexed about why the fight began. The truth surfaced later, unrelated to work. Though I typically didn't come home for lunch, I left work early this time, having coordinated with my boss. With my wife on a day off, I aimed to surprise her with flowers and a restaurant invitation for a calm, relaxed conversation, hoping it would prompt honesty. Upon arriving home, I instantly noticed intimate activities in the kitchen between Amber and another man. They hastily dressed, my wife then insisting it was time for conversation. I didn't expect such cynicism and a cold-blooded tone from her. Furious, I threw a book at her, yelling for her and her lover to leave the apartment. I can't recall all the words I shouted in a fit of anger and resentment as we faced each other. The man attempted to calm me down, but I brushed his hand away and delivered two punches to the stranger's face. Surprisingly, Amber, who had stood up for him, revealed that my wife was planning to leave me for this stranger. He explained in broken English with a strong accent that he loved my wife and intended to take her to Spain. As I listened, I noticed he was over 40 and objectively unattractive, dressed expensively, a rich man seeking a young woman. It suddenly clicked in my mind when I remembered finding English and Spanish language books in my wife's possession. At the time, I dismissed it, thinking she wanted to learn something new for our future travels. Now I realized those were clues to her secret relationship. They had planned to announce their one-year correspondence and a month-long secret relationship that evening, revealing my wife's intention to move to Malaga, Spain, with him. She claimed he was better than me in every way. Shocked, all I managed to do was to punch the Spaniard in the stomach before he hurriedly fled the house. I couldn't believe Amber's audacity when she tried to scold me for my behavior without uttering a word. In response, I took hold of her hair and pushed her out onto the street, slamming the door right in front of her. Her packed suitcases went flying as she threatened to call the police if I didn't return them. I felt no remorse for my actions. In fact, I had to restrain myself from slapping Amber. If her lover was so well off, he could get her a hotel room. Promptly, I called work and took a week off at my own expense, honestly explaining to my boss that I was going through a divorce. I went to the store, using the money I had set aside for the restaurant to purchase plenty of alcohol and food. For 3 days, I drowned my sorrows, and the rest of the time, I remained at home doing nothing. By the end of my time off, I came to terms with the end of my marriage, even though the heartache lingered. I thought my story had concluded, but life proved otherwise. 3 weeks after I kicked out my wife and her lover, I returned home from work, had a quick dinner, and collapsed on the couch with a beer bottle, hoping to watch some TV. The doorbell rang, and to my surprise, my wife stood on the threshold, insisting that we needed to talk seriously. "Come in," I said with a sense of gloating. I couldn't put into words my satisfaction. As it turned out, the Spaniard had his sights set on more than just my wife in America. He had 7 other women besides her. I made a decision, choosing someone other than my wife. Boarding the same plane bound for Spain, I accompanied a 19-year-old girl, leaving Amber behind, empty-handed, having taken all her savings and valuable jewelry. Meanwhile, my wife sought refuge at her mom's place for an entire week. During that time, thoughts of our past life together overwhelmed her, making her realize the magnitude of her loss in leaving me. She couldn't fathom living without me, and with what seemed like sincere remorse, confessed to a colossal mistake. Tearfully, she expressed her love for only me and pleaded for forgiveness, acknowledging that it wouldn't come easily. Despite her readiness to work on herself and rectify her errors, promising that such a betrayal would never recur, she also expressed a desire to start a family with me, agreeing to all the conditions I set. Curious about the divorce papers, I told her to return in 3 weeks. However, I had not signed the papers at that point. Seizing the opportunity, I fabricated the presence of other women in my life. When my wife returned, I was resolute on the divorce, having signed all the documents and submitted them to court. She appeared devastated, admitting her actions were a colossal mistake. Although I sympathized with her genuine tears, the trust had been irreparably shattered. The divorce brought a sense of relief and freedom. My grandmother's apartment remained mine, offering solitude. Post-divorce, Amber persisted in seeking forgiveness, perhaps hoping for a reconciliation. Yet I remained steadfast, and she eventually returned to her parents, marking the end of our communication. I never pondered her current life, choosing to focus on my own youth and live as I pleased. This is my story, and if you enjoyed it, kindly show support and subscribe to our channel. Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for being part of our journey.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I've been working as a researcher since completing my doctorate in graduate school. It's been 4 years since I married Adam, and during that time, we've been living with Adam's parents. Both of us work at a top company, utilizing the second-floor room while my in-laws use the first floor. We adopted this 2-generation living arrangement 2 years ago. Initially, the cohabitation didn't bother me, but as time passed, my mother-in-law started bullying me. She labeled me as lazy, assuming that my job as a researcher allowed me to avoid responsibilities like having children. These comments occurred when my father-in-law and husband weren't around, turning into a persistent form of nagging. On my days off, I faced deliberate inconveniences, like finding my shoes dirtied and stepped on. Even when I adjusted to her demands, my mother-in-law seemed dissatisfied with everything I did. She misunderstood my role as a researcher, believing it to be a simple and low-paying job, despite my respectable income. The situation worsened when I discovered my mother-in-law bad-mouthing me to the neighbors, spreading false information about my lifestyle and choices. I endured the daily criticisms until it became unbearable. Despite my efforts to maintain cleanliness and minimalism, she insisted on finding fault with our living arrangements. When my stress reached a breaking point, my husband noticed my distress and encouraged me to open up. I revealed the extent of the bullying and stress caused by my mother-in-law. Together, we decided to confront his parents about the situation and demanded reimbursement for the construction cost of the house. During the conversation, my husband disclosed that the house's construction was partially funded by my mother's inheritance, a fact kept secret to avoid any sense of obligation. This revelation shocked my in-laws, especially my mother-in-law, who was forced to face the consequences of her actions. Realizing the gravity of the situation, my father-in-law insisted on rectifying the situation. He directed my mother-in-law to apologize to the neighbors and make amends for spreading false information. Furthermore, my husband proposed selling the house and returning the money to me and my mother. Faced with the prospect of losing the house, my mother-in-law reluctantly agreed to the terms. The next day, my father-in-law, Adam, and my mother-in-law went around the neighborhood, correcting the lies and fabrications she had spread. With the house sold, we returned the money to my mother, who insisted we use it as our share of the inheritance. In the end, my husband and I decided to build a new house halfway between our workplaces, away from the toxicity of the previous living arrangement. Now, we're living a relaxed life, occasionally visited by my mother, who acknowledges the joy of living with someone you love. Looking forward next year, there will be 3 of us.